Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. This is Adriana from Mama More Dolls. And as a part of our doula month, today we're having another special guest that is coming to talk about a very important topic with us today. And thank you for joining us. If you are live with us today, that's fantastic. If you have any questions, you can write them down and then we'll get back to you right away if we can, if we have time. If you are not live, you're watching the replay, you can write those questions there and then we'll get back to you as soon as possible after we read them. So today we have, as I said, a very special guest. Her name is Nadia Houle.
Yeah.
I tried to pronounce her last name. Thank you so much for coming to our live today, Nadia, to being with us. I must say that Nadia and we are actually in the same city. We are very lucky to be in a beautiful Edmonton, sunny day today because it's been really cold. And I'm glad that we were able to do this conversation together today. So, Nadia, I'm just going to stop talking because I want you to tell us about you and what you do and a little bit about the work that you do. So welcome, Nadia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I am a birth doula. I also come from a mixed Cree Métis background. My father's family is from the Treaty 8 territory up near Spirit River. So I've been doing birth work for a long time, about 12 years now. And it's only been recently that as many people who come from an Indigenous background who may not have been raised with culture or in the community, is that we're rediscovering our roots. And as most people will also empathize with me, is that it's very difficult coming from, most people will identify me as a white person. And so it's been very difficult coming back into culture. So what I did is I ventured on and joined with some Indigenous friends of mine who do birth work. And what I discovered in helping with some of those doula trainings is that my birth knowledge will be my way of giving back as I learn culture from my Nehiyaw people. I also have 4 children of my own. I am an acupuncturist by day. I also practice cranial sacral therapy and herbal therapy. And my latest is my Indigenous Birth of Alberta project, which you'll get an idea of as I continue to talk.
Yes. Well, yes. You are definitely a very busy person. I can tell all those activities, and I'm glad that you are doing very meaningful work. And talking about that, I wanted to ask you, many people were wondering, well, what is the difference between being a regular doula and an Indigenous doula? What's the difference in terms of the practice? If you can tell us a little bit about that, and then we can talk about your work with Indigenous Birth of Alberta, and you can tell people about that as well, because it's really important. So, yeah.
And it's, as we journey through, and as I've met with lots of Indigenous birth workers from all over North America and the world, the doula term is a really difficult one because it is a Greek word. And in our communities and traditionally, the midwife would be the central supporter for the community. So the midwife would often be the one helping with a girl's first period, couples trying to conceive, supporting them and taking care of them through pregnancy, and attending the birth and afterwards, and parenting and all of that. Where now we have somebody who does each one of those things. So every time we go to ask about, is there a Nehiyaw word for doula, there isn't one. There's the person who helps the mother, which is the midwife, the person who helps do the fire, the person who takes care of the children. So there's all these different roles where we have this word doula that doesn't really mean much in our communities. Yes. So we try to use the word birth worker. Some people still don't know what that means. So, but the difference is that an Indigenous person doing birth work who understands culture and can empathize with Indigenous people is somebody who understands the history of Indigenous people, who maybe also possesses the teachings for herbs that a pregnant person would take, or the songs that they would sing, or the smudging that takes place, or the placenta ceremony, all of those ceremonies and teachings that would happen. An Indigenous birth worker probably most likely possesses that. I have a sick one at home and he's not happy I'm on the computer. So whereas a non-Indigenous doula most often is somebody who doesn't identify as Indigenous, who may not understand the background and the history of Indigenous people, and doesn't mean that they can't support Indigenous people, but for now, the goal is for our Indigenous birth workers to have the space to learn and reclaim the birth work and the traditions and the ceremonies from their Indigenous elders or their communities. So we get a lot of people who are non-Indigenous who want to support Indigenous people, and I think that's wonderful. But in our context of the society that we have, we try to keep it to just Indigenous people so that we can maintain the sacredness of it. We struggle so much with cultural appropriation, there's always that struggle with it. So although it may feel exclusive to many non-Indigenous people, it's just our way of protecting and getting our revitalization of traditions back before we start sharing it with everybody else.
So that makes sense. I'm just thinking about what we were talking before, that it was about the history of birth workers and midwives. That it seems to be very related. You're talking about history and about cultural appropriation. And can you tell us a little bit? Can you educate us a little bit on that, please?
Yeah, with what I know. So majority of the literature and what most of us know here in, so we're located in Treaty 6 territory. So Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8 territory, and the Métis Nation of Alberta makes up Alberta. And ironic to the history of birth, where midwives attended all the births, and when the early days of the Turtle Island being taken over by the settlers, it was the Indigenous midwives who were taking care of the settlers' wives who were having babies. And the Indigenous midwives who were taking care of all the birth in their community. Fast forward to where we are today, anybody who's been trying to get a midwife knows it's nearly impossible. Here in Alberta, we have a waiting list of 2,000 names at least. And the exclusivity of obtaining a midwife is if you don't own a computer, you can't apply on the centralized provincial form, which is online. If you don't know what a midwife does, if you don't have a midwife in your area, those they really exclude. So that waiting list is probably much more than what it is. And what that says to me is that midwifery now becomes a privilege. Midwifery is a privilege, midwifery care, because the middle to upper class, mostly white people, are most likely to obtain a midwife than the remote communities who don't have access to midwifery, along with a lot of the at-risk youth that we work with. So there are many, many barriers to midwifery care in Alberta. And it's just interesting how it used to be looked upon as being the poor man's maternity model of care, to now it's a very privileged thing in Alberta to get a midwife. And on that note, we have 3 in the province of Alberta. We have 3 midwives who identify as Indigenous.
Okay.
And I can't remember the exact numbers. There are 96 midwives in Alberta, but So that just in and of itself tells us that we have lost the colonization of maternity care and of our people we've lost that midwifery practice, because even in some communities, midwifery is not even talked about, because giving birth in the hospital is a privilege, or that's their only option at this point.
Nadia, you were mentioning about Indigenous Birth of Alberta, that you were involved in that. Can you tell us how can we help? First, tell us about it, and then how can we help?
Right. So Indigenous Birth of Alberta is a grassroots organization that I started in March of 2016. And it was a way to gather people like myself and people who already practiced in the birth world traditionally or in the medical world, to bring us all together to help revitalize some traditions, sharing, learning, and to really advocate for midwifery here in Alberta. So we're a small organization. We try to support families when we can. Prenatal classes we run when we can, but also a lot of advocacy and education. So what we do is we're based out of private funding right now. So we have a You Caring page that we'll post in the comments after, that people can donate to. And that's where those funds go to, is for people like myself or the other members, all the planning that we're doing for grant proposals, for the space that we get to use sometimes, and for facilitating classes and going out to communities and being a part of their prenatal classes. And then also the frontline work of providing breastfeeding support, birth support, childbirth education, and postpartum support for families.
That's right. Well, that's wonderful. What I'll do is now when we end, I am going to copy that link here on the thread here, so people can take a look, and if they can support the project, that would be fantastic. Yeah. Nadia, we're running out of time as usual. But I really wanted to thank you for coming here today and give us a very small, really idea of what this is. I mean, it will be wonderful to have more information. Is it possible for us to share your page of where people can find more information about this topic? Would you mind if we share your link in there as well?
Yeah, that would be great. We have a Facebook page, is what we're based out of right now, is our Indigenous Birth of Alberta Facebook page.
Okay, so from that Facebook page, people can get in touch with you and make those donations and help as well, right?
Yes, awesome.
Okay. I'll put that information there. And as I said, again, thank you so much. If you guys have any questions for Nadia, as I said, many of you might be watching the replay. Just write them down here and I'll pass them to Nadia later, or you can actually contact her directly. I'll put that information in her as well. Thank you so much, Nadia. You have a very nice rest of the day, and I hope everyone feels better.
Yeah.
Yes. And thanks so much, everyone. You have a very nice Thursday, and we'll see you next week. We're going to be talking about placentas next week. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Nadia. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.